open. No. I think it's just some. Yes. I think so.
Mendoza, please, welcome.
Wanna move? Hello?
So I was thinking,
Shall I move?
could have been
Hello?
good to begin with this kind to be in the heart of the city,
Yes.
in the heart of action. with these guys running around, playing, fighting. Where is this shot?
It was shot in the busiest part of Manila. It's called Quiapo. It's the center of the busiest part of Manila. And this is one of my very first few films. In fact, it was one of my favorite films. I was the one who did the camera works for this project. I think this is my fourth film.
It's one of your favorite films.
Yes, one of my favorite films. Yeah.
Means that you have films which are weaker, not well done.
Well, only because when I started doing film, my very first film, actually, The Masur, was shot more in a traditional way. But this is more of, because it was my first film. Masur was my first film. I was still trying to find my way at the time of, how I would fit into this world of cinema, because I started quite late in my career as a filmmaker. I started when I was 45, and at the time, I knew the traditional way of making film, and that's how I followed it, how I started it. And then eventually, of course, it evolved, because once you start, doing films and watching your films on a big screen, and then hearing the reaction of the people, it somehow changes your insight and your views about cinema. And after doing maybe 3 films, I tried to do something different. This time I am more into the people. This time I'm more into the character. In fact, even the way the stories was, the screenplay, actually how it developed, it was actually more on the putting all the research and all the stories of different characters that I've met, that we met together with my writer, in this part of the city with this Quiapo. So I have this personal interaction with this character, and then I try to develop them into a screenplay character. But I met with these real people on the street. So I tried to put the story together to come up with a screenplay, and then I shot it in a very spontaneous way. And of course, in the editing part, it's totally different thing altogether.
So you were going to describe all these ways to conceive cinema, but you mentioned it. I wanted to speak about that later on. But where are you coming from? You began your first film. You were 45. So what the hell were you doing before?
Well, I am in the business, actually. I'm already in the show business. I was doing mainstream production. I am a production designer for mainstream cinema. When I say mainstream, of course, in the Philippines, we do the genre movies. Genre movies meaning romantic comedies,
Can I interrupt you? Can I interrupt you? Before you explain that, I want to show something. Okay? Le neuf, s'il vous plaît. Le neuf. Autant que ça.
Yes. Okay. 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 Don't worry. No, no, don't worry.
So for the beginning of this sequence, you're coming from this age, from the
Yeah,
soaps.
that's where I worked before. I do production design, but I don't necessarily make film. But I know the world. The world is about mainstream. It's about commercialism. When you say commercialism, this is what the people most like about films, and this is just about entertainment. And in the Philippines, we have a lot of this kind of, we call them telenovelas, and a lot of melodrama with films. And yeah, that's basically the the kind of cinema in the country where I'm coming from.
And why did you decide to leave this part of production?
No, I did not decide to leave it. It was by accident. I from this from making this kind of films in the cinema industry in the Philippines, I moved on to advertising. I worked in advertising for another 10 years as an art director. And then while I was actually in advertising, that's where my friend of mine approached me. And this happens in 2005, in 2005, and he approached me and he asked me if he want to make a film. And of course I said yes, I easily said yes.
I was writing my notes and thinking, you were needing all these
Yeah,
years to
alright.
get rich, very rich, in order to make these very personal films.
Well, in advertising, it's a different world. You sell products. You are a salesman.
Somewhat.
In the kind of films that I make before as a production designer, you are selling these commercial films and commercial stories. So I know that I am into that world. But it was also very clear to me that if ever I'll be given a chance to make a film on my own, those are not the kind of films that I'm gonna make. Because I from the very start, I have a different notion about cinema, or the kind of cinema that I'll make in the future. Because remember, before 2005,
Okay.
there is only the 35 millimeter
Now?
celluloid films that we use, and it was very expensive at the time to make a film. So not everybody can be given a chance to make a film, especially if you don't have a name. Nobody will just gamble on you and make a film. So it was really very expensive. So part of it, I think, maybe because of the digital technology. Because at that time, I only used a video for my first feature, which is the Masur. So when I was given that chance, because the producer only invested a small amount of money to make a film, I easily grabbed the idea, I easily grabbed the opportunity. So that's how it started.
The mirror is broken on purpose.
Yes, that's part of the aesthetics. That's part of the symbol I was trying to establish in the film service. Because in the opening of the film, you have another woman actually in front of the mirror. You have three major.
It's a film service.
This is film service. I have three women in the film. The young woman, and then the supposedly the sister, and then the mother, the grandmother. So we have three generations of women. They're all in front of the mirror, trying to fix themselves, but of course with different stories behind. So there's like a broken mirror.
To understand how you work in the streets, so what is the preparation about location, about the streets you film in neighborhoods? We'll see other ones afterwards, but how do you scout to decide to shoot in this place and not in the other ones?
Well, actually, it all starts with the kind of stories that you're telling, with the kind of the idea that you want to. Before even you go to this location, it should be clear in your mind what kind of stories you're telling, what kind of community, what kind of look that you want to show in your film, before you even go to scout in this location. So for me, it's not just about the location; it's more of the people. Who are the people that you are portraying in your film? What kind of people that you are portraying in your film? What is your story? So that's where I start. And I have to know first the story, but even before that, I have to know the people. Knowing the people is actually knowing the community, it's knowing the environment, it's knowing the community in itself. So scouting for me is just like part of the tail end of the preparation. Because the start of the filmmaking process for me, when I do the research and the interaction and the communication with these people, it's already knowing the community. It's already knowing them. So when I scout, it's more of part of the pre-production stage for me, where to put my camera, for me how I would interact with the community, involving my actors, whether they're professional or non-professional. So it's more of technical. It's more of technical aspect for me.
Just to complete your portrait, you want to know the people, but who are you in terms of social commitment in your country? Are you coming from a bourgeois family, wealthy family? Are your parents artists, filmmakers? Where are you coming from, and have you visited the film school?
I've never been to a film school. I think my education about film is my experience in filmmaking, my experience in the industry. I started when I was about 25. I started in theater and television, and I've worked with all sorts of people. Doing television work is crazy, and doing commercial film is even more crazy. And doing advertising is not even crazy. It's beyond crazy, because you deal with client, you deal with all sorts of creative people to sell product. So you kind of interact with all these people every day, and that was my education, because I know exactly what I'm not gonna do when I make films. In few words, well,
have you been supported by your parents?
I was born in the countryside. I was born with a very religious family, and my parents are very religious. I studied in a Catholic school. My child was kind of normal.
Just as information, in your country, Filipino, about over 80% of the people are Catholic.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
And another information, just to have to frame, in your country, you have over 7,000 islands.
More than 7,000
You know
islands,
that?
yes.
And but only 2,000 have inhabitants on them. The other ones are empty. And is it right that in your country you have 100 million inhabitants?
Yes, there are about 100 million population. And it just in Manila alone, Metro Manila, where I came from, has about 20 million population already. So it's a kind of populated country, and especially in the municipality where I came from.
So some information. So you have many people living in a few places.
Yes, yes. But remember, we are in an archipelago, so we have these islands are scattered, and we speak different dialects, languages. Like for instance, I speak a different language, and my where I came from actually is just like an hour and a half away from the center, from Manila, but I still do speak a different language. So my childhood, going back to my childhood, is kind of, when I say normal, it's just like nothing really extraordinary. When I was in, I'm not really like an exceptional student, even when I was in college. So I'm just like an ordinary student, nothing really spectacular.
So boring.
You can say that. You can say that again.
I'm kidding. No, I was watching your films many times. If I would begin with a sequence of a comedy where we can really laugh, and a good comedy means to laugh and to cry. So I have a proposition, if you want. It's this situation where this woman appears on the street, and then something happens in her flat. You remember, because of the teeth? Because of her teeth?
Okay. That's in the yes.
So,
yes.
But let's watch that, and just to get one point we want to raise afterwards. You have this story of this woman and her teeth. You will get the point. But in between, you have other stories. So also in what we have seen now, you have three stories. You have this soap opera. You have the guy watching it. Then you have these portraits on the wall, all the history of a family, and then this old woman. And you film her with a kind of desire. You film her breast and then her face. So in this sequence, you have already many aspects. You bringing together, you editing together. And this is what we're going to see now. It's the same principle to put together elements of the real situations in order to tell a story. Let's see that. C'est donc le numéro, merci beaucoup, la séquence 2.
Está pasada. Uy, bakit? Ganun lang naman ako ah.
Kausapin mo na.
Uy, puta kayo sa mga pinakay dyan!
Kakasuhin ko mukha mo.
Hindi mo na kasama namin sa kanya sa prato. Nagbabagyo!
Tinetext ka na naman ng girlfriend mo eh. Ay, nakumulog.
Makunagot. Hindi, joke lang. Kiss mo na.
Sige na ako.
Ganon.
Hintayin ka sana kayo sa babasa namin tonight kung may time lang kayo.
Teka. Itong kuya ko, marami tong tayo. Tatabakan ka niyo, promise. Promise. Sige na. Uy.
Sige, wala na ako.
Ikaw na yun, tara. Sige na.
Ano, laro na tayo.
Palit mo na ako sa iba. Oh. Bakit masama mong selos?
Marami ka naman babae dun.
Layon ko pa rin yung mahal ko. Huwag mong isipin yun.
Jesus! Tigilan mo nga ako.
Kasunod, pag umalis ka, magpaalam ka sa akin. At least alam ko.
Bakit ikaw nagpapaalam ka ba?
Oo naman. May mga lalaki natural yun.
Tural dun.
Natural, lalaki kami, di ba? Hindi kami magpapaalam sa inyo, okay lang. Huwag mo nang ulitin yun, ha? Ano?
Putang ina!
Ha? Paano ka?
Yung postiso ko, tingnan mo! Tulungan mo naman ako!
Tapos ka nga dyan!
Bakit tingnan mo dito?
Ha? Wala eh!
Ano yun?
Wala dito! Baka doon! Baka doon!
Mang Seba! Wala, na wala. Bakit tingnan nga yung postiso ko? Baka nahulog.
Doon, nandun!
Baka nalaglag dyan eh. Bakit tingnan mo sa kanan?
Doon nahulog!
Ano yung nahulog? Ano yung nahulog? Ano nawala? Sabi nga agad, mutang na eh. Ikaw na ang tinutulungan, galit ka pa? Bahala ka nga. Takya, huwag mo naman ako tulak!
Bilisan mo!
Takya, tingnan mo dito eh. Ma'am Bebo, bakit tingnan yung
Yan,
puso ko?
yan, nahulog nga dyan, pustiso. Dito nga banda, no? Kaya, kalkalin natin.
Yes, pa! Dito, dito!
Yan, yan, dito lang yun eh. Itong banda nahulog eh. Ah, wala rin eh. Dito lang banda nahulog yun eh.
Tingnan mo
Wala,
dyan.
bigla tumalsik eh.
Wala dyan.
Hayaan mo na kasi pagawa naman tayo ng bago.
Ayaw, paano eh. Pinagirapan ko yun eh.
Pagawa na lang tayo ulit.
Ayaw ko. Mahal mo yun eh. Matig ba ako pangulit sa pulis na ninakaw ko? Kinapinapan ko lang ako yun. Punong yun, sulalag lang. Takilang katangaan ko eh. Hanapin mo! Hindi ka kumigay na dyan. Ano ngayon, maghanap ka kasi dyan. Tignan mo dyan.
So, many things to explain. Back to the place, this neighborhood. You know it. You research it. You know these houses, these flats. It's really existing. It's not a studio.
No, it's not a studio. It's an actual place. It's like what I've said a while ago. It's the busiest part of Manila, of the center of Manila, and this is where you see all sorts of character or different kinds of characters. In fact, when I was doing a research about this project, I was able to to meet with them, with the real people, and this happens during the national election in the Philippines. And it so happened that because we are really, like what I've said a while ago, we are a Catholic country. It also happens in time of during the time of Holy Week. So there is a celebration of Holy Week in the Philippines, and during the Lenten season. So this happens at the time, and I try to situate their story during this time of the year, which is for me is like is an irony of celebration of religion, of the society and of the politics.
One main theme in your films is the one of the money. And with money, you can do anything. And of course, the first gesture is to steal money. And in this case, it's very obvious how much money is important for these people who are mostly poor. Could you reflect a little bit about this question of to get money and to be somebody because of money?
Well, this is the story of different people who are into this kind of business in a way. This is a story of small-time crooks, okay? And the whole film actually just deals with different kind of characters of how they try to make a living out of stealing, okay? But at the same time, I also portray them as people with people with religion, maybe stealers or small-time crooks with religion, but they are also human beings who also falls in love, who are also vain in a way. There are also people who knows how to love their parents. There are also people who knows how to love their brothers and their family. I'm not trying to glorify them. I'm just trying to tell their story. But the bigger story at the end of this film is not just about the small-time crooks. There's a bigger system. There's a bigger system actually that happens. So this is just like the whole film just tackles and deals with all these characters up to the very end. And in the end, well, you haven't seen the film, but at the very end, there is a much bigger story than that, which actually is not being tackled in the film or even in the real society. Because the real society actually back in the Philippines is busy dealing with the small-time crooks, dealing with this kind of people who try to exist, who try to exist and try to live their life. But unfortunately, they're living their life in this kind of way.
Is it because you pay so much attention to your characters that you're following them with the cameras so near in either mostly long shots? Tell us about this this way to be. The camera becomes a body next to the other bodies.
Well, I think it all boils down to the aesthetics that you're trying to create in the film. Like, for instance, the reason why I like this film so much is a personal, for me, this film, because it defines the kind of film aesthetics that I want to pursue. It defines me. It defines the kind of filmmaker that I am. So this is very guerrilla, and and this is my aesthetics, my style, my method of filming. Because, like, for instance, when you film the characters in that, following them all the time, you don't only reveal the environment, but you reveal part of them. So you are actually seeing different stories in one while you are following one character, because you are exploring the environment, and in doing so, you don't only bring the audience in this environment. You don't only make them see and feel the environment, this chaotic environment where the characters are, but you also somehow make them part of that environment, because you are bringing so much life into the big screen, the way you see it, the way the camera would film and would see it, because that's also my way of telling a story. Is like bringing real life into big screen. Is not you don't glamorize it, you don't block it, because I find it a bit unnatural to block the actors and do something that is not natural.
I'm looking to name some of your actors, because you're working since years with a kind of family, a family of your actors, and just help me say some names: Coco Martin, Julio Diaz, Lou Veloso, Alan Paule, or Maria Isabel Lopez, Mercedes Cabral. Very important persons in your life and in your films. So speak about a little bit about this relation you have with the actors and actresses, because on the other hand, we could imagine that you film with the real persons in these neighborhoods. Why do you need actors?
Well, other than they're good friends way back, I think it's also important that you develop a certain kind of relationship with your actors, because they know the kind of thinking, the kind of films that you make. They know that you don't make commercial films, so it's important to have this kind of relationship. And I like them because they know my cinema. In other words, there's less talk on the set because they know my previous film. Like, for instance, you mentioned Jacqueline Jose and Alan Paule and Coco Martin. They were in my first film. And Jacqueline Jose, for instance, now is in my 13th film, my latest, which wasn't released yet. And so with Alan Paule. Now, so they're professional actors I've worked with over and over and over again. Plus, there's some additional newer actors who also have the same kind of acting style, acting method that I've been developing even before. When I say acting method, meaning that I don't want them performing in front of the camera, so they know that. They know that because I don't give them scripts. That's one thing that I do on the set. I have a well-structured script that I developed with my writers and researchers, but I don't provide them.
With the dialogues? Everything is written? The dialogues as well?
Of course. but dialogues are just guides. I would let my actors, you know, deliver it and do it the way they wanted to do it, because I have I have this respect, you know, great respect with actors, with artists, and I think it should always be a collaboration between the actors and the director. It's not just about the director doing everything on the set. It's also about different artists who are on the set collaborating one another, from the production designer to the cinematographer, you know, to the crowd directors. Like for instance, in this scene, most of them actually you have in the scene you have my crowd directors acting also, trying to control the people on the street. Yeah, you also have my assistant directors, my stuntmen. So I have staff on the set who are also part of the production that you see them on the camera, but you don't necessarily, you know, notice them. But they are actually trying to trying to um, trying to put everything together on the set while I'm filming. So everything is very spontaneous, which I really like, because you can really feel the energy, you know, you can feel the environment as you filmed it.
This guy stealing this jewelry and running in the street. Do you stage the people, the crowd?
No, I don't stage them. I stage the actor on where I have some I have some areas where they should run, but I also position some people that, well, they are stuntmen. They work that way. I mean, that's their professional job. They are stuntmen, and I position them also, and I have my camera hidden. So if, for instance, the character runs from this point to that point, I have some stuntmen position also in those areas, so that if ever something happened, it's our actors. When I say something happened, if you know, if we was accidentally bump somebody on the street, it is not part of the set. Then you know, at least it's manageable.
This bunch of youngsters harassing this young person, this young in the small street. Are they improvising what they say, or it's all
Yes,
written?
it's all about improvisation. These are my workshoppers. They're acting students who wants to act. I usually give them acting workshops, and in the acting workshops, I would give them a situation where they could, you know, do something like this. And this is just like I will tell them, okay, you do your exercise in the improvisation stuff, and that's what they do. So, yeah.
And in the streets, for instance, do you rehearsal many times? Or are you shooting many times?
No, I don't rehearse. I only have like one take. And if I have another take, I position the camera on a different angle, and I will have another situation going. I don't repeat you know, one situation to the other. If I do it here, for instance, and if I'm not happy about the shots, then I do it in another area, so that everything will be, you know, will be captured. Everything is like real life, and nothing is rehearsed.
But could you explain more specifically why you do not rehearsal? Why do you not repeat shots?
Well, you cannot replay your life. That's how I say it. Because I am bringing so much life, as much as possible, bringing life on the big screen, and that's exactly what I want to capture. If you do it again, it's no longer real. I mean, maybe you would act differently, you would, you know, you would run differently the way you would run the first time. So maybe this time, the second time, you know, there's a hole here, so you'll try to avoid it. But the first time, you won't avoid that because you don't know that. So if something happens, for instance, and that's while you were running, like for instance, it happened to me. I slipped because somebody threw water on the street while I was running. So I tripped. But the nice thing about it is, of course, it's the good. At least the camera wasn't broken, but something brilliant was happened, because I was able to capture, you know, that moment when I fall, and I used that in the film. So you know, this kind of spontaneity that you cannot rehearse.
And it doesn't bother you when you have not enough light or too much light
No, I mean, when you go out on the street and you look at the sun, you can see. I mean, you cannot really look at the sun, you know. And that's how it is in real life. So if it, but I mean, you can capture that as well in your camera, you know. And there's like so much sunlight, it's stark light that you cannot look. Like if I look, for instance, at the light, I cannot do that. So if the camera captures that, then so be it.
we'll see afterwards a long scene in the night and we almost see nothing. It happens, huh?
Yes.
It happens.
Yeah.
For long minutes. It's
Yeah.
exciting. It's a time for the audience to intervene, of course. Please, vous êtes les bienvenus pour poser des questions, intervenir, enfin, faire des remarques sur ce que vous avez vu, ce que vous avez déjà connu, ce que vous connaissez déjà des films de Briante Mendoza. Est-ce que quelqu'un veut se manifester? En tout cas, je sais que là, il y a une cinéaste et enseignante à la aide qui dirige des... sorry, in English. Here, there is a teacher, a filmmaker, and teacher for living here in the neighborhood, and she's organizing workshops about directing actors. So maybe she has a question or a remark about what Briante said. Microphone, est-ce qu'il y a un micro dans la salle? Un instant. Lève la main, Séverine.
Vous m'entendez là? Ah oui. Okay. I thought this very long shot we just seen with the woman without upper teeth when we follow her boyfriend or her husband is amazing. So congratulations for that very long shot.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to ask you: is she? This one is an actress also? So they're both actors?
Well, actually, she's not really professional actress, but she was like doing cameo, just like some bit. She's a bit player. I think she did like 1 or 2 films before I got her into this film. The only requirements I had at that time is not even whether you're professional or non-professional. The only requirements I had at that time is if you can do that, remove the dentures, and willing to be shot, to be filmed without the dentures, because a lot of women wouldn't want to be filmed without their dentures on, because they would look they wouldn't look nice. So it's more of a challenge. So when she accepted that, so I easily put her on the film.
And if I understood right, then all the people that appear in the street, then they are your students, acting
most
students,
of them.
actors.
Most of them.
Yes.
They're not professional.
You stage everything that we see in the street.
Not as
Or
in
almost.
stage, almost, because if there's anything that I don't like to use the word stage, because it's as if you're doing you choreograph them, but I would give them the situation and I'll just ask them more or less where they're gonna go or how they're gonna do it, so that it's more of technical reason, because I'm also doing the camera works, or sometimes I don't even ask them at all. It's just more of like, for instance, there's this long shot coming from the house into the open street, and with just me with the camera. So I would just tell them that if you are seeing us already approaching, then you can do your thing, because that what would connect me, for instance, from one actor to the other and then to the other, and that's the only thing that I will tell them.
Okay. And do you prepare anything with the actors or non-actors before the shooting?
Do I prepare?
Yeah, like with the actors, do you do some kind of rehearsal, improvisation?
No,
or
the workshop or what I've teaching, they actually spontaneity. So I don't really tell them to prepare anything. It's more of them knowing about their characters. That's what their preparation is. So if for instance, they are thieves or they're small-time crooks, then they should research about that. Not necessarily do it, but at least they should know how, for instance, how to snatch, for instance, the necklace or do stuff like that. They should learn how to do that only by themselves. But on the action in itself, I don't really rehearse them.
So they discover the story while they are shooting it, or do you speak with them about the story in advance?
They don't know the story.
They don't know at all.
They don't know the whole film. I think it's not the job of the actor to know his future or what's gonna happen to him in the because that's how life is. You don't know what's gonna happen in your future. So I would only give them a situation. They know for a fact that for instance, they are thieves, and that's it. They are in love. For instance, in one character, you are in love with this girl, and it so happened that one of your friend is also is having a relationship with this girl, and then you found out, but he doesn't know how you're gonna film it and how you're gonna do it. So.
I have another question. I've been quite amazed about the way you start to film one story, and in the same shot you start to follow someone else, and it's like if you aggregate different story in one single shot. And I think it works very well in such a town where it's very crowded, where everyone lives with one another or above one another. And I was quite fascinated by these techniques. I've not seen all your films, so could you a bit explain how it works and how you prepare this?
Well, not all my films are like this. This is my fourth film. And like what I've said, this is the kind of aesthetics I would like to develop. But unfortunately, not all my stories, not all my stories have this kind of form, as this kind of way. Because I think I always look at the story before the form. I think this story deserves this kind of treatment of filming them. But there are stories, for instance, in Taklub, which will be shown later. It has also 3 different characters or 4 different characters, but it wasn't filmed that way. So it depends. It depends. That's why I like this a lot, because it exposes so much about different kind of characters and different kind of stories, because it calls for it. The camera and the storytelling calls for it, that you are revealing not just the character but also stories of different people within the community, because this is the story of not just about the character but about the community itself. People living in this community.
Other questions? Autre intervention? Madame, là, et ensuite vous, monsieur. Oui?
First of all, thank you very much you came. I'm happy that I see something from Philippines. I have a question. You say that you're spontaneously working with people. You don't rehearse and you don't prepare them. But for example, in your film Lola, this is a portrait about a grandmother, right? And about his grandson who's stealing and who's always doing not nice things. So how do you work with her? Because I mean, she's an old lady, and as I know, as a Philippine girl, that working or being with elder people in Philippines, it needs a lot of respect and a lot of passion and a lot of like. So that's why I'm asking how did you manage to work with this old lady? I mean, it's quite cute. It's very nice.
Yes, Lola. Well, I spoke to her when we filmed that. That was about.
Sorry, could we see an excerpt of the film?
Ah, okay.
I have a sequence of the film, okay? Then you can answer the question.
Okay.
Donc, on va demander à notre assistante si précieuse l'extrait numéro 3. Merci.
Saan ka pupunta? Ay, nagagaling ko lang sa ospital. Dinala ko yung anak ko sa doktor. Oo, saka nagtatai. Bumalik lang ako kasi nangutang muna ako kay Miss Agustin ng pera. Pabili ng gamot. Nagpapautang ng pera kay Miss Agustin? Oo. Basta may collateral kayo. Alam nyo, strict nyo yung mag-asawa eh. Kahit malaki. Opo, kung may
papel ko ng lupa, ha? At para madala doon, ha?
O sige
Ay,
po.
siya nga pala, Linda. Samahan mo naman ako mamaya.
Ay, o sige ho, pagbalik ko, ha?
Oo.
Sige ho, babalikan ko kayo.
Ikaw na gumaling na anak ko.
Ay, salamat ho. Sige po.
Salamat.
Tao po!
Eto na. Eto na siya.
Bakit? Andiyan ho ba si Miss Agustin? Nandito!
Kailangan namin siyang makausap. Importante lang.
Anong kailangan niyo? Mangungutang po kami. Kasama ko po si Lola Puring. Magkano?
40 sana.
Pwede po ba? Tingnan ko. Sumunod na lang kayo. Sige po. Ano? Babalik na lang daw kayo bukas kasi gabi na hindi sila nagpapautang. Bukas na kayo babalik.
Pakiusap naman, importante lang kasi.
Iwan na lang yung dokumento ninyo o anong mga papeles ninyo dapat ipakita.
Pakiingatan lang, hindi. Napakahirap kasi kung kopyan yan eh sa ano.
Kung matagal na ako dito, hindi naman wala namang nawawala.
Sige, balik na lang po kami bukas ng umaga.
O sige, balik na
Maraming
kayo.
salamat po.
Okay, masyadong malikot ha? Ay, kanina pa ho ba kayo?
Hindi. Kadarating ko lang. Mga 10 minuto pa lang ako nakakarating eh. Oo.
Mupo muna kayo doon.
Eh,
Ay, order na ho ba kayo?
hindi. Ikaw na umorder kung anong gusto ninyo. At ako na magbabayad na lahat.
Masyado na huwag mo ho. Ngayon ako nakakahiya naman.
Eh, sige na, sige na. Yan naman yung munting bagay lang na nakayanan ko. Sige,
Sige ho. Teka, dali, samahan niyo kami, Nay. Sige na. Tatag niyo mga bata. Ako, Nay. Ay, Nay, ano nga pala yung kakainin niyo? Sana ng palabok eh. Palabok? Meron ba dito? Titignan ko po. Kayo ho.
Ang hindi na gusto ko ako.
Sige po.
Ako, alam ninyo, kala ko hindi ako makakarating ngayon eh. Ay, umatake ho ang rayuma ko. Eh, napakasakit. Puyat na puyat ako. Kayo ho ba may rayuma?
Siyempre ho, sa edad ko, paminsan-minsan ho, nararamdaman ko talaga sumasakit ng mga buto ko.
Eh, ano naman ho ginagamit niyong gamot? iniinom o kung ano.
Sa nun, lalagyan ko na lamang bang liniment.
Ganun. May iniinom po ba kayo?
At saka yun, bawal na gambo na nakain. Gaya ng sitaw.
Oo, yung sitaw. Yung repolyo.
Yeah, repolyo.
Okra.
Daw ho, sabi na eh.
Tsaka ho yung mga laman loob. Dinuguan.
Baboy.
Oo. Kung hindi naman ho tayo kakain ng mga yun, mamamatay na ho tayo. Wala tayong makakain. Oh, hindi ho ba? Naku, masasarap ho yan. Talong, isasawak sa bagoong. Ay, naku. Ganyan ho siguro talaga ang mga matatanda. Marami.
Ito nga ho yun eh. Mahirap nga po. Pag tumanda na yan, marami nang bawal.
Oo, marami yung bawal. At napakahirap naman ho. Pagka tayo inatake ng sakit, katulad ho nung diabetes, yung, ito ho, yung mataas ang presyon, yung sa puso. Ay, naku.
Bakit po? Kayo ho ba'y may diabetes?
Wala po. Pero yun ho, kinamatay ng asawa ko eh.
Ako tatanungin niyo, yung asawa ko namatay din sa, naku, ang tigas-tigas ng ulo. Bawal na bawal kasi sa kanya kumain ng maalat. Kasi nga, may sakit sa bato. Wala, hindi mapigil. Kaya
naku, napakatitigas naman ho ng ulo niyang mga lalaking yan.
Namatay din.
Ito ho ang ito nga pala yung pera. ₱5,000 ito. Bilangin ninyo.
Wala ba?
Lugaw na lang.
Lugaw na lang
People of the Philippines versus Matay Burgos, criminal case number 65709, robbery with homicide.
Appearances, same appearance for the prosecution, Your Honor. We are ready.
Same appearance for the accused, ready, Your Honor.
Proceed.
I would like to manifest in this honorable court that the complainant has already executed their affidavit of desistance. Since the complainant is no longer interested in pursuing this case against the accused, this representation would like to move to the dismissal of the complaint against the accused, Your Honor.
The prosecution, do you have any other objection?
Your Honor, please, we have no objection to the manifestation. We have run over the affidavit of resistance and we found the same to be in order.
How about the complainant? Did you voluntarily execute the affidavit of desistance?
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, sir.
There being no objection from the public prosecutor, the motion is hereby granted and the accused be released from custody. So ordered.
Lady giving the money is buying the freedom of her son, who is a murderer. So because of this money, 50,000 pesos, it's not so much money, it's about 1,000 francs. Huh? I have just to, I checked that. But go ahead, because of the actress. But it's for small money, she's buying the freedom of her son.
Well, basically, it's an out-of-court settlement. You call that an out-of-court settlement. I mean, they can sue it, but the problem is, of course, because they're in a very poor situation, they cannot even afford, a lawyer that even if the government provide them a lawyer, just for instance, looking for money to, to go from one place to the other, they don't have that. So unfortunately, they settle for an out-of-court settlement. In an out-of-court settlement, one party can, like pay, and this is the normal amount. It really depends on the individual on how much.
It's about 1,000 Swiss francs, a little bit more than 1,000 Swiss francs.
Yes.
But her son was a murderer. He killed the son of the older lady.
Yes. Yeah. So this is the situation. Of course, this is the situation that we are trying to present in the film. Is the social issues and the social commentary that we have about our justice system in the Philippines.
So we had this question of this lady about these older actresses and how do.
Well, these are two professional actors actually. The older lady that you were asking a while ago. Was a professional actor who's been acting since the 50s. So this is the first time, according to her, that she didn't have a script. She was kind of surprised, but happily surprised about it because there was one time when they got 2 international awards in this film, and one of the award was given back in the Philippines because we were not able to go to Iran. Okay, they were given the Best Actress Award in Fahar International Film Festival, and when they were given that award, she was really crying, and she was very emotional because she said, it took me so many years to be able to get an award, but an international award, and at the same time in something that I've been wanting to do. And then she spoke to me and she said that. The way they make films before in the 50s and in the 60s, they are choreographed. They're blocked from one place to the other. That they have to look at the light so that their face can be seen, and to deliver some lines from one block into the other. And then she told me that this is the first time I've had such freedom, that I never knew and I never realized that we can also share something. When making film. And that was for me very touching because, these are actors, these are professional actors. Of course, they can share something. This is what we see them on the big screen. But, that feeling that they weren't really sharing, coming from her, that she wasn't really sharing because she wasn't really given the freedom for her to express, how she would like to interpret, for instance, the character. So that was very touching for me.
These conversations they have in the restaurant is quite long, and we know that you're chatting before the moment she's giving the money. So how did you decide to have this length of this dialogue and they're just saying almost nothing about their health and her husband? So it's very amusing for us because we know exactly what's going on, but they're playing something on another level.
Yeah, because. Actually, this situation, it's in the script, but I did not ask them to memorize the script. I just asked them can you please talk something about your health? What do you usually, talk about when you are, people of your age, what do you usually talk about? And then, of course, then they'll say, of course, we talk about our age, we talk about our health because we're not that young anymore. We'll talk about our whatever, sickness that we have. And then I told them, can you just talk about it? And then that's what happened. And also in the film, about the money that's to be given is already immaterial in a way because we already saw and experienced how they try to get the money. And, we already have the story before that. So, and if you don't talk about it anymore in the most important part where you're going to give it, I think it even makes it more poignant.
Just one thing before this question of this gentleman. Hey, man, you're filming the real life in the streets, but the rain. The rain is artificial.
Artificial.
Okay. Because in Brillante's films, we have many scenes with rain, heavy rain.
Yeah. But remember, I filmed this during the rainy season. So there were also situations when it is really actual rain. So the reason why we have the special effects, we call the special effects, because you cannot really capture that on a camera. You have to light it in a way so to be able to capture it. So the rain, yes, is artificial, but the acting and everything else is not.
But just, it's okay. Uh, but no, but why your interest to film with so many scenes of rain in your films? Because we know that it's difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult, but it's also, it's also not just about the symbol and the metaphor that I'm trying to say in the film. That, of course, when it's raining, it's always, especially back in the film, it's always flooded, number one. It's very hard to move around. But if you are an old person, in this kind of weather, it's even much harder. So I try to put them in this situation, with that kind of environment. Of course, for us, it just looks like it is just raining. It is just rain. But in the film, it's saying something. It's another character in itself. The weather is a character in itself. Plus, back in the Philippines, we only have two weather. It's the rainy season and the dry season. So this happens during the wet season.
And you have to add rain, artificial sometimes, and the wind.
And the wind also. And the wind also. So, of course, the wind and the rain are part of our... Because, for everyone's information, it's always not only it's raining, not only it's flooded, but there's always typhoon. In fact, one of my films is about the typhoon. Taklub is about the typhoon. So, typhoons, heavy rains are part of our daily lives. It's a lifestyle in the Philippines.
Good answer, Monsieur.
Hi. I have two questions. The first one is regarding ethics, and the second one is about aesthetics, because you mentioned that a lot. Seeing as how we're in the context of a human rights film festival, I was wondering why so many of your films depict prostitution, human trafficking, poverty, and where are the limits to that? When does it become exploitation? I know that you're trying to go for realism. I'm Filipino myself, so it's a question that I struggle with as well.
Okay. It becomes exploitation when you are just dealing about poverty. But when you are dealing about the story of real people in this situation, it's not exploitation. It so happened that these people, most of the people in my films, or most of the characters that you see in my film are poor. But I don't dwell on poverty. I dwell on people who happens to be poor and in that kind of situation. Then you are telling stories of human being. Then you are telling stories not only about Filipinos, but also of other Filipinos who happens to be poor. And of other nations as well. We are in a first world country, for instance, that you don't experience this in a first world country. But there are also other developing country and third world country who might be experiencing the same. For instance, I just came from Colombia, and they saw my films. I had a retrospective there, and they said that this is the same thing happening here in Colombia. It's the same situation, but we're happy that you are showing it because people, we recognize that, and it connects us somehow. It becomes universal because we are experiencing the same. My first film was shown in Greece in 2005. And there were, from among the audience, they were saying, is this happening in your country? And I said, yes, it's happening. And then one audience says, why are you asking this question? Don't you think this is not happening in our country? This is happening in Greece. So you don't ask questions like that. That doesn't happen in some part of the world. Now, when you make a story, why do I make stories like this? Because I am interested, for the people to know that there's such problem. And we should realize this problem and acknowledge this problem. We cannot just make film about our touristic side. We have one of the best beaches in the world. I think we have the best beach in the world. But it's a common knowledge. It's a common knowledge. Everybody knows that. You know, we are living in an archipelago, and I think we're the most beautiful country. I would say that, but we have problems. We have problems, and we have to acknowledge these problems. We have to realize that there's problem. And for us Filipinos, a lot of us, because like what you said a while ago, there are like 100 million Filipinos, and 40% of this population goes for mainstream cinema and watch romantic comedy. You know, the kind of films that I make are only watched by a fraction of the population, not even a fraction of the population. I am interested to do this kind of films because I care for my country and I care a lot for my people. And if I'm not going to do this kind of films, then nobody will.
Second question.
Yeah. So I understand that aspect. However, how do you justify your aesthetics? Why is it the appropriate aesthetic? Why the use of long takes? Why the use of such flagrant sexuality, Christianity? I remember there's a traffic sequence that goes over 40 minutes, I think. And the murder sequence in Kinatai goes on for 15 minutes or something like that. Why is this appropriate? It's not an ethical question. It's why does it start here and there, and or otherwise, why the use of so much movement in the clips that we were shown? Why the rain?
Okay. All this that you mentioned actually happens in real life, happens in the Philippines, and I'm just depicting life the way it is. For instance, weather is so much part of our life, and as much as religion is so much part of our life. We are 80%, 90% Catholic, and religion is so much part of each and every Filipinos. You know, and that's the irony about it. Politics is also so much part of our lives, and that's what I show in my film. Now, the long takes, I'd like to depict life the way you experience it in real life, because for me, cinema is not just about a one-dimension kind of thing. You sit there as an audience and then you watch film. Cinema for me is a total experience. You know, you experience it. You are there. You are in the character. You are within the character. You smell it. You know, you can feel it. You can almost taste it. That's cinema for me. It becomes three-dimensional. It's not just about you being a spectator. So that's my views of cinema. That's my views of my aesthetics. So if you have long takes, for instance, in thy room, you have a couple waiting for somebody, and they stay there forever, and then you get bored. But that's how it is. Don't we get bored when we wait for somebody who doesn't come? But you are experiencing it. You are actually in their mindset that at that point in time in their life, it's almost like forever. So when you are, for instance, inside the van, you know, and you have somebody being tortured, a woman being tortured, what will you do? Everything is magnified. You know, the moaning of the woman, the air conditioning inside the car, and people outside who doesn't seem to know what's happening inside the van. And it becomes even more disturbing because a situation is going on, is happening right inside the van, and then everybody else around you doesn't seem to know and doesn't seem to care. And that's life. And then that's how the experience of the character. So it becomes real. It becomes part of us. It becomes, you are feeling it as an audience. So that's my view and that's my take on it.
One thing is very interesting, and the question has been raised a little bit before in your films, because on one hand, the storyline is very easy, very simple. And because of these long shots, including different aspects of real life, politics, religion, characters, dealers, and so on, crime, and hope, and beauty, and ugliness, because of this long shot, including all these aspects, this very simple way to tell a story becomes complex.
Yeah, it's not easy to make simple story. I think the simplicity.
Sorry, but
yeah.
I mean it in the best way.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
complexity is interesting.
Yes, it's seemingly simple, but it's not really simple because actually, the whole idea of putting all this together is to make the storytelling simple, but actually it's adding, it's putting all these details together and telling it in a simple way that makes it, in a way, complex when you think about it, or as you are watching it, because you don't seem to, it doesn't get your attention as you are watching it, because you are watching it like, the story unfolds. But in fact, all these ingredients are put together in such a way that they won't be, they won't, in a way, get in the way while you are watching the film and as the story unfolds.
I suggest to see maybe one of the last clips. I don't like this word clips. It's a sequence, a real piece of cinema. A clip is something different. It belongs to the ads, to the commercials. So not a clip, it's a sequence of Kinatay. That's one of the films which is very dark. It's a way going to hell. And now we're going to see the beginning of this long journey of the main character going to hell. Okay? And the character we're following is a student as policeman.
Is a criminology student, which I happened to interview actually accidentally while doing a research about Tirador, about Slingshot, which was shown earlier. So, like what I've said, most of the characters in my films are real life characters. And here in Kinatay is a student that I met and who told me a story. So that's how we came about with this story. And again, it's not just about, is a story that is kind of disturbing, but it's a story about something that happened in the Philippines many, many years ago, and it's still happening until now. There were several cases that happened about this situation, about people, or mostly women, that are butchered. And he was a witness of this.
In the beginning of the film, you have a very happy story of a young couple with a child. They're going to be married. It's happiness. And then you have a scene of comedy, this teaching at the police station, where no student is really listening to what is said. It's very funny and frightening. And then you have something like this scene. Please, 4, s'il vous plaît.
Manong, kamusta? Kompleto ba to? Oo, kompleto yan. Salamat po. Basta tol. Salamat. Kulang to ah.
Balikan mo na lang sa susunod.
Putang ina mo eh. Puro ka babalik-balik eh. Sa susunod ha. Babalik ako ha. Putang ina mo.
Daming tao, no?
Dito po. Dito yung iba po sa bag eh.
Ayun. Kompleto to, ha?
Kompleto po yan. Good!
Yong! Kompleto daw yun.
Bigay lahat?
Oo, bigay lahat.
Sama ka.
Saan?
Basta, sabi ni Cap, sama ka raw eh.
Tungin na ba kung mamaya, ulat na naman yan.
Kita ka ng malaki rito, tanga.
Tara! Ano oras tayo uwi?
Hindi ko alam.
Hinihintay niyo kung Cecil, baka masyado tayo umagahin, ha?
Text mo na lang, sabi mo gagabihin ka.
Ay, Byong! Tali ka sa amin, tanga, may liga.
Basketball?
Oo!
Hindi tayo kikita ng pera raw bago.
Tara. Byong, saan tayo pupunta?
May operation tayo.
Ano operation?
We had to cut somewhere because it's the beginning of a very long journey. They're arresting, they're kidnapping a woman and going really very long way. And it's incredible how you extending this time because for minutes and minutes you show nothing but this journey in the night and this young man who's a policeman, he tries to be policeman, who is more and more suspicious about this operation. So you do not hesitate to include in your film very long sequences where almost nothing is happening, but everything is happening.
Yeah. In fact, when when we were reading the script, because my mentor did this script for me. When I was reading it, it's the same feeling I had. You know, what's happening here? There's really nothing happening in the script. There's really nothing. When I was reading it, it's so hard for me to imagine the emotion that's going through. If you're gonna film that sequence where there is really nothing happening. So even I myself wasn't really sure about it. In fact, I was so unsure and insecure that what will I do in this scene where there is really nothing happening. So what we did was we ride a van. I called it like a ride through. I ride the van with my cinematographer and my sound designer, and we try to experience if we are in that situation. What are we going to hear or see? And I try to capture that moment, and I think sound here plays a very important role, because if you are not talking and if you're not saying anything, it's really the sound that will give you the information about what's happening around you. It's actually the images that you see while you are inside the van that would tell you all the information. Like for instance, in this scene, I saw something like, back in the Philippines, there are like a lot of billboards, like lighted signs, and in one of these lighted signs, you have like what is this? Like Jesus Christ is with you, or something like that, or when you are in danger or something like that, just call Jesus Christ. And these are like ironic images that would somehow give another dimension in the storytelling. And there were also a lot of people walking on the street, and even the sound, for instance, inside a van is a story in itself, it's a character in itself. So this is what I try to do, and I wasn't afraid to include that in the film because it's like a real journey. It's like a journey of silence, and yet there is so much, there's so much things that's going on while you are in this journey of silence.
And it's very tough for us because we do not know at this moment what is going to happen. And what is going to happen is going to be the hell, because a woman will be murdered in terrible circumstances.
Yeah, it's some sort also of a preparation in a way. It's a prelude to hell. It's a prelude to something that is disturbing.
That means that you basically trust the spectator. You trust us watching the film.
Well,
no.
When you say trust, I leave it to the spectator because for me that is important. And I cannot really rely on the spectators. I just follow my instinct, and then I let the audience really decide for themselves, because generally not all audience would like it. There are a lot of audience would not look at the film or would leave because nothing is happening. Actually, would leave the cinema or leave the theater, but but that's it. I mean, maybe it's not the film for them. So, but it's the kind of film I want to show my audience. I mean, for the audience who would stay in the cinema.
In this case, everybody stayed. Any questions? The time is running. Yes, madame, tout au fond. Tout au fond. De ce côté-ci. Ah, pardon. Levez la main.
Good evening. Yeah, I would like to make a question about Kinatai also. Actually, it's this sequence where there's a torture scene of this woman by the police. I actually, when I watched this scene, I remember it was very, very hard for me to watch. And actually, I think that's the purpose of the scene also. It's really very terrible. Actually, I compare it to Kieslowski's scene on the film You Won't Kill, where there's a taxi driver and he's being killed, but there were Kieslowski choose to not to show where the killing. You just see the hands and you listen that. You choose to show us this woman being tortured and being completely cut in pieces. And actually, that's what I was really very interested about knowing how did you decide at that moment to show, and how it came to you to this choice, why you decided to show it rather than not to show it.
I am more into psychological torture. Psychological torture is more of what you are not seeing, but you can almost feel in your system, in yourself. But showing part, for instance, of the woman body parts that is being cut and not showing everything, it gives you an idea already. So it becomes a mental, psychological torture in a way, because the reason why I decided to do that is not only for the audience, not just for the audience to feel, awful or to feel disturbed about it, but also for them to realize that such violence and such situation really happened. And when you are in that situation, I mean, you cannot really do anything about it. Like, for instance, the witness, that person who witnessed that crime, for instance, will never be the same person again because of that scene, that thing that they've seen. So the kind of life that we portray, for instance, for him that he wanted to have in the first part of the film, and the kind of life that he has now, even by just witnessing that situation, is really, it's really something that would really change him altogether. Is being an ordinary person into somebody who is now part of that syndicate. So that's why I decided to show that and to have the audience experience that, because it's like as if they are this person they are this guy who is witnessing that kind of crime, that even he was not really part, like physically, cutting the woman into pieces, but by just witnessing it, he becomes like an accomplice and will be an accomplice for the rest of his life.
Important to say is that we never watch to the scene directly. We watch that through the eyes of the witness, and this is a kind of I would say of helping me to agree the scene, to resist. I mean,
it's like seeing the situation through the eyes of this character, actually. So yeah, and it was also tough for the actor to portray this, to act this.
The time is running. We have a few minutes more. Any questions? Yes, monsieur.
You have worked with many Filipina actresses, but you have worked with Nora Honor, who is probably the superstar of Filipino movies from 20, 30 years. She has been used to old style of acting, but she has now appeared in 2 of your movies at least. But she's a superstar, and how did you work with her?
Was he not too expensive?
No, yeah. Well, Nora Honor is like I think the most well-known Filipino actress. I don't know how to. Of course, Nora Honor is Nora Honor, but when I approach her not like she is Nora Honor. When I went to I have this one piece of paper with me, like a half-paragraph synopsis of the film, and I went to the studio where she is working with, she's a contract with at that time, and asked permission if they will allow her to film with me and take her in this island in the south that nobody goes to actually at that time, and presented them the story. And they said yes, they like it. And then I met with her, and I told her that you will play this part, and it's going to be a very difficult, very physical, scene or character you will play. And then she just said yes. So I think the reason why I'm saying this is that yes, she's the most famous actress in the world, in the Philippines, but I think it's how you deal with them also. It's how you deal with her. I approached her like, we wanted to make film, and this is my kind of way of doing films. This is how I direct actors. I don't do scripts. Everything is new to her, but I think it's really the respect and the trust that she liked. Because I have respect for her, and I trust her as an artist. So that's why we have this very good collaboration, and that's why we made another film after that.
You think about Captive, and in this film you're working with Isabelle Huppert.
Well, yeah.
Huh? So what was that?
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the same thing with Isabelle Huppert. Is of course, when I was meeting with her, the manager would ask for the script, and if I give them the script, they would know the story already. But because this was based on this was based on also on a real situation that happened in the Philippines. So it's a common knowledge already. There's really nothing to hide. So that's what I showed her. But during the shoot, actually, it's the same thing. I told her that I don't give you the scripts. So every day she would ask me, what are we going to film today? And I said, okay, you're going to be in the ship or you're going to be in the boat, and everybody will be there, and you'll just be seated with another old lady. And what will I do? I just sit there. That's the instructions. And what do I say? It's up to you. If they would ask you, they will talk to you or something. So that's the situation also with Isabel Huppert. And I remembered, on the last day she's leaving the Philippines, she was interviewed by the media, and it's the same thing that she said, that this is the first time I've worked with all the, with all the filmmakers in France and in Europe, and this is the first time I did a film without a script. And she was very thankful, and she said, I'm going to bring this with me, this experience with me, because I've learned a lot in this filmmaking style, that everything that you do on the set is spontaneous.
These two ladies and other ones were playing as prisoners in a group of Islamic terrorists in an island, and that's the story. Brillante Mendoza, tell us, we are trying to fulfill this 2 hours conversation. Could you speak in terms of pleasure? Where do you feel the most pleasure in all these jobs needed to do a film? Writing, filming, editing, showing the films here? Where do you have this feeling of a deep commitment with what you're interested in?
Well, I think for me, there are 3 processes in making a film. It is the script development, the production, and the post-production, which is the editing. For me, the most fulfilling phase in doing film is the research, and it's really the script development, because it is at this point where you learn, not only as a filmmaker, not only in creating the story, but also you learn something from the people that you are talking to. It's an entirely different kind of experience, because you are no longer just an artist trying to create a story. You are a person. You are an individual trying to find out a story. And when you try to find out story of other people, you just don't listen to their story. You listen to their life. And you communicate with them as an individual, not just an artist or not just a filmmaker. So it's very enlightening, and it teaches you something, because the other phase, the production, this is just an interpretation of their life, which is not real, because what is real is the life out there.
Can cinema, in French we say cinéma, you understand this word, it's so important for all of us. Can cinema change the world?
No. Cinema can affect the world, but it cannot change the world. It's the people who can change the world. It is us who can change the world. Cinema is just an instrument. Cinema is just a phase in our life. Cinema is an art. Cinema can affect us. It can influence us, but it cannot change the world.
Can cinema put the fire in the world?
It can, maybe. Maybe it can, but not totally.
Do you know why I'm speaking about fire now, right now, at this moment?
Yes.
Yes?
No, no.
No. So, the last surprise for tonight. Please, le numéro 8.
minsan 70, tapos 80, ganyan.
70, isang araw, nagtsatsaga sa doon. Sino mas gwapo sa inyo dalawa?
Siya.
Sino mas malaki dito sa inyo dalawa?
Siya.
Oh, mas malaki pala dito niya.